Now we're going to create a little worksheet. It's not going to be very complicated. We've got a blank workbook here, and we're going to go ahead and enter some data. Now, we're going to start by moving our active cell where we want the data to go. And we want it in A2. Now, if your active cell is up here in A1, you could click on A2. Or what I usually do when I'm actually going to type data, I tend to just use the keyboard instead of the mouse. And if I wanted to get it down to A2, I would either press the Enter key or use the down arrow key. Okay, either one will move it down within a column. And so what we're going to put in A2 is the word employee. And then once we've keyed that in, the next cell that we want to add data to is B2. So right now, we're still adding data to cell A2. So we need to finish this off before we start typing in B2. And because we want to go across, we can either press the Tab key or we can press the right arrow key. So either Tab or right arrow will enter employee into cell A2, and it'll also move that active cell for us. Okay? And you want to make sure that when you're entering these are considered column headings, that each column heading is entered into a separate cell. Okay? You don't want to stick everything into A2. Okay? So make sure you enter the data and that the active cell has moved. So now we're in B2, and we're going to key in location. And you can either tab or right arrow. That'll enter location into B2 and move the active cell to C2. We're going to key in benefits. Now that is the last column heading that we need to enter. So you can press the Enter key, you can use the down arrow. It doesn't matter what you do because we're done going across. Okay, so we just want to enter that heading, and then we're going to move the active cell to A3. So you can click the mouse on A3, you can use your arrow key. This would be the left arrow key, okay, whatever you think is the easiest. And we're going to enter row headings. Okay, so this is going to be an identifier for what we're entering within that row. And for row headings, you basically type them and just press your Enter key or the down arrow key. And I should mention, the minute you key in a letter, Excel looks at the data as text. And with text, if what you're typing is longer than the width of the cell, it will spill over into adjacent cells. And if you type something in the adjacent cell, then that text will just kind of appear chopped off. And one of the things you are going to be learning is how to widen a column. So if any of your text appears chopped off, don't worry. You just need to widen the column. Now we've got, at this point, our text entered, and we are going to save this file. So I'm going to click on the Save button. And the first time you click on that button, it is going to execute the Save As command. You can see that. We're going to enter the file name, which is 1-emp Bena for benefits. And then I do want you to take a look at where that file is going to be saved. Okay, so it's just telling us here it's an Excel workbook. And you can see that by default, mine is going to go into OneDrive. Now, I don't necessarily want to save it to OneDrive. I would actually kind of like to save it to the lesson 1 folder. So what I'm going to do is change the location. So I'm going to click right on it. And I'm going to navigate to the location where I downloaded and extracted the student files. This EL1C1 is the first lesson, and that is where I want to put that file. So I'm going to key in that name again and click on Save. Okay, now if you look at the top, we are going to see the name instead of Book 1, followed by Excel. Now, as you're typing, if you've noticed that you've made a mistake, you can actually edit the contents of a cell fairly easily. And so there's a couple ways you can do it. We need to edit cell A7. So we could click on it and then click up here in the formula bar. Or if you want to edit right in A7, you double click. And then you can use your arrow keys to move your insertion mark around. And what we're going to do is put a C before the K. So we want that insertion mark between the I and the K. You're going to type a C, and then you're going to press Enter. And let's see, we are going to change the contents of A4. Now, if you want to change everything that's in the cell, rather than, just add a letter, it's just easiest to click right on it and type right over the top. So you do not need to edit. You just click to make the cell active, and then we're going to key in Bryant and press Enter. Now they want us to change the contents of C2 to classification. And they would like for you to learn how to use the go-to feature. I mean, even though we can see C2, so we're going to go ahead and learn this feature. So we're going to click the arrow, and we're going to click on go-to. The cell we want to go to is C2. And this is actually really a useful command in a large workbook. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. You'll notice that it moves the active cell to C2. And we're going to completely change this, so we do not need to edit right over the top. We're just going to key in classification and press Enter. Now, in order to save our changes, we're going to click on Save. And you may have noticed when we keyed in classification, it spilled over into the next cell, which is fine. Okay, we're not putting anything in that cell, so it's fine that it spilled over. Make sure you click on Save. And we are going to continue editing our file. We are going to go up to cell A1. And usually at the top of a workbook, you do have a title, and that is precisely what we're going to be entering. And so we're going to key in team space net, and they would like a symbol. So I'm going to press the space bar. There is something in Office. It's in all of the Office applications, and it's called autocorrect. And oftentimes when you type a sequence of characters, it will convert those to a symbol. And I'm sure you have seen like the little smiley faces, that type of thing. You know, when you do a colon and a right parenthesis in a space in Microsoft Office, you actually get, you know, a little smiley graphic. Okay? That is a symptom of what autocorrect does. And we're going to be using autocorrect to insert a trademark symbol. And to do that, we're going to do a left parenthesis. Now you'll notice I did a space after net because this kind of needs to be on its own. And we're going to do a left parenthesis, a lowercase r, and a right parenthesis. Now so far we have no symbol. You will get the symbol when you press space. Okay, and so you can kind of see that little trademark symbol. Okay, I'm going to press enter. Okay, so there are a lot of symbols that you can get in Excel. And if you want to see where they are located, because I think that is kind of helpful to be aware of what you have available to you. We're going to go into File. Remember, this takes us into Backstage. And we're going to go down to Options. And this little option section tells you what all the default settings are in Excel. So it's actually kind of handy to know where this is, especially if Excel is doing something that you don't want it to do. But what we're going to do is go into Proofing. And here's the autocorrect option button. So we're just going to click on it. And this little table down here shows you all of the keystrokes on the left and what it converts to on the right. And you'll notice once you get past symbols, on the left we basically have words that are commonly misspelled, and then the correction that it'll make on the right. Okay, and there are lots and lots of these. Okay, so if you were ever wondering why Microsoft Office, it would appear that it's magic, it'll fix a misspelled word, this is why. Okay, and you can actually add to this list. If you're kind of a lazy typist like me, I could actually put my initials here, have it replaced with my first and last name, and I could add that to the list. And then anytime I had to key in my first and last name, I could just do my initials instead. Or if I had to key in Northwestern Michigan College a lot, I could do NMC here and then fully spell it out here. Okay, and add that. Now that would actually save me quite a bit of time, because instead of typing all of this out, I would just type NMC and do a space. So you can see that this is actually quite useful. And you can use it to get certain symbols. Now let's go ahead and save this. You'll notice I do like to save frequently. That prevents a disaster if you lose power. And we're going to go ahead, we're going to go ahead and key in the rest of the text. So we are going to start in cell B3. And when you're keying, you know, you can go across by row or you can go down by column. It's totally up to you. So I'm just going to go ahead and go down by column. And this is kind of a personal preference thing. Usually when I'm creating a spreadsheet, I will do whatever I think is the fastest. Now you'll notice when I get down here, I do have to kind of reposition that active cell. And you might think, well, I'm not a very good typist. Is there a way to copy paste? Yes, there is. Escape out of that one. You can actually just click on this, go to copy, paste, and then for hourly, we can kind of do the same thing. Now, if you don't want to use your mouse with this, there are some shortcuts. So for hourly, I can do Control and C, and then I can click Control and V, V as in Victor, will paste. Okay, so you certainly can copy paste. A lot of times you'll notice that after you're done with an operation, you get this little animated marching ant thing. If it'll eventually go away, but if it bothers you, just press escape and it'll go away. Now we're going to go ahead and save. And at this point, we are done with this particular workbook. So to close out of the workbook but stay in Excel, okay, we want to remain in Excel, we do need to go into Backstage. Because if you just click this red X in the corner, it will exit your workbook, but it'll also exit Excel. So if we want to stay in Excel, we've got to go into Backstage View and click on Close.